So when I got there, I hadn't been there very long, and I got called into the Cassia County Sheriff's Office. The sheriff wants to see you, and I thought, oh no, what have I done? I'm already in trouble with the sheriff. I just got here. And I went in, and the sheriff's name at the time, his name was Billy Crystal, Sheriff Crystal. He'd been a long time serving sheriff, a very popular sheriff in that county, and he was towards the end of his career. And I'll never forget, he called me and he said, I understand you're a new trooper in our county. I want to treat you like you're one of my own deputies. And that's exactly how he treated me. To this day, some of my closest friends are some of those Cassia and Minidoka deputies that I served with, because that's who you work with. I worked with other state guys, certainly other troopers in that area, but not to the extent that I did the county, our city and county counterparts there. Uh, because that's when you have something that you're really, a hot call you're going to, it takes everybody because it's too rural. One person can't do it all. So the call volume, the call load, we certainly have an emphasis on traffic, and an emphasis on traffic specifically on the interstate. But anything that the county needed or city needed help with, and I did a lot of translating, because there's a high in those two counties, a high non-English speaking population. So I did a lot of translating, any calls for service that they needed help with if they didn't have the resources. We do, particularly in the rural part of the county. If it was hard for them to get to, or they didn't have somebody in that part, then we would jump in just like they jump in for the interstate. So it's really collaboration, which is the magic about law enforcement in Idaho.
Okay, can you introduce yourself for me, please?
Sure. My name is Kedrick Wills. I serve as a director of the Idaho State Police.
So basically, you're the person in charge of the whole shebang.
So for the way the state police is set up, we have a director that's essentially like a chief of police, and that's the position that I hold.
Okay, give me an idea how big is ISP?
We have about 720 total employees throughout all of our divisions. And we have 6 districts throughout the state of Idaho. But those employees do a myriad of things. That's not state troopers. That's 720 total employees. So when you get right down to the troopers on the road, I think we're about 340, 350 commissioned personnel. So detectives, patrol, all the things that we do, the Capitol security, all that's about 350. So about half our agency.
What are the primary functions for troopers?
So, uniform patrol trooper, traffic safety, and assisting allied agencies are really what their main functions are. So we have the authority to enforce any law in the state of Idaho, any state law in the state of Idaho, and some federal laws as it relates to commercial vehicles. And really, they have a lot of latitude that's a broad brush to paint with, right? So they have a lot of latitude of what to do out there, and we expect them to use that latitude because we are a relatively, for the size of our state, geographical size of our state, we're a relatively small force.
And you also have detectives that work for your agency. What do they do? What crimes do they cover?
Yeah, so in every district, all 6 of our districts, we have investigations. So there's patrol division and investigations in every district, and they work mid to upper level drug dealers and drug crimes, and then they also assist our allied partners, our city and county partners, with whatever needs they have. So depending on the agency size, Boise PD doesn't really need a lot of help in homicides and those kinds of things. So, but you compare that to a rural sheriff's office that has no detectives, or maybe one detective, or a rural PD, they need a lot of assistance. And so it's really dependent on the allied agency needs. We also work with our federal partners, and in fact have federal partners embedded in some of our district offices that we work together. Idaho is so rural, we've got to be collaborative. And that's one of the magic sauce, so to speak, of Idaho law enforcement, is collaboration.
Okay. And just real briefly, so for the audience who's watching, Colonel thought this was just going to be an audio, so he's not in uniform, but I think he looks great, so we're just going to throw that out there. Okay, so Colonel, can you give me a little bit of background about you growing up, what your family life was like, and what maybe was in the background that drew you to law enforcement?
Yeah, so I'm a second generation trooper. My father retired after 30 years with the state police. And so I grew up as a trooper's child. And my father was what we call in the Idaho State Police a resident trooper. So he was the only state police trooper in our small community. I grew up in a community of about 1,500 people. And he was the state police there. There was nobody else. And so I learned early on a couple of things by watching my father. And I watched him, and I understood a really important lesson of the importance of collaboration, because the people he worked with were the city officers and the county deputies in our area. And those, to this day, are some of his very best friends, because that's who he worked with. And so I understood that the size of the badge and what the badge says means less, and what means more is how you're serving the public. And so I learned that early on in my life, which has really helped me as we collaborate. The majority of the work we do is collaboration with our allied agency partners. And so that was helpful. And the other thing that I learned, because it was a small community, is the importance of integrating in the community. My parents, my mother and father, both were very involved in our little community. They're not from there. State police sent them there before I was born even. And I learned watching them. My mother was a school teacher. My father was a Chamber of Commerce president as a resident trooper. They were involved in their church. After he retired, they bought a theater and ran that for 25 years. My mother was the mayor. My father, after he retired from the state police, served in the legislature for 14 years. So I really learned the importance of service and community service. And it's not about, I mean, he retired as a corporal. He did not promote. He was never a supervisor. It was not about where you serve, but it's how you serve that matters most. And that's what I really learned from my parents early on.
Brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I've got two brothers and a sister.
And then did your brothers or sisters go into law enforcement?
So my older brother and I joined the state police together, and he was with the state police for about 3 years and then spent about, I think, 12 or 15 years with Boise PD. I'm not exactly sure how long. And he's now out of law enforcement. And my younger brother joined Twin Falls Police and then came to Boise Police. And he's been at Boise PD coming on 25 years, I think, or 23 years. He's a motor officer for Boise Police.
So why did you go into law enforcement, do you think?
Watching my father, I wanted to do the job that he had, not realizing that he made it look way more fun than in some cases I felt like it was. Yeah, I joined the state police. I'd been with the state police for a couple of years, and I said, Dad, the job I watched you have, I thought you had, is not the job I have. And I found out really quick that job probably never existed. He always just made it look really, really fun and had a great time at work. But while he was providing service, and I wanted to be part of that pride of the state police. I want to be part of the service that I saw him do, and he just enjoyed his work.
Without knowing what he did prior to joining up, what did you see in your dad that went, that's a good job, I want to do that?
Well, I saw the value of service. I saw that. He was the only state police trooper in our town, so I saw regularly people would knock on our door and ask for help for whatever. It didn't matter what it was, and he would always provide that help. I never saw him say no to whatever it was, including having he would catch fish. He's an avid fisherman. He'd catch fish and have a fish fry and sell tickets and use that money to give scholarships to kids that want to go into law enforcement. In fact, one of those guys just retired from the fishing game. Spent a whole career at the fishing game, that got a scholarship in probably the late 70s from my dad at the city park in Glen, Ferry, Idaho, raising money for kids that wanted to go into law enforcement. So he was always active trying to help other people. And I saw that, and I equated. I didn't really realize that's who he was. I saw it more as that's who the state police is. And I didn't really separate, I think, as a young child, the difference between service in the state police and just who my dad was in service in general. It was all the same to me.
Do you think if I asked your brothers, they'd say the same thing, that it was your dad that kind of got him into law enforcement?
I would think so, but it's not just him. It was being immersed in that world.
Okay.
I mean, the local sheriff's offices, all those deputies, had very little turnover at the time. It's Elmore County Sheriff's Office, and so that's who we grew up with and who I knew. So I mean, that was the world we were immersed in all the time. It was just such a part of our world. It wasn't. I mean, certainly Dad was the reason we were in that world, but we're in that world with all kinds of officers and deputies and troopers. And so we're so immersed there. I think that's what they would share.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your career. You didn't immediately start with ISP. You actually, in 1991, you started with Glen's Ferry. Why not jump just to ISP? Why'd you start with Glen's Ferry?
Well, I was right out of high school to begin with, so I didn't meet the age requirement.
Okay.
But also, that was a job that was available, and I was there. And so I think there was at a point in time, Glens Ferry, I think at the time had 5 officers, if I'm not mistaken, 4 or 5 officers. 3 of them were me and my brothers at one point. And so it was a good place to start. It was our hometown. It's where we lived. It made sense. There were openings.
So a couple questions about that. First of all, how old were you when you started?
Yeah, I was a reserve officer at 18 years old.
18 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. And being a reserve officer or just a regular officer that's in the community that you grew up in, how was that? How was that dealing with other students, teachers, whatever? I mean, tell me about that.
So it was a great experience. It really was. It was For me, it was a great place to start. It was a great experience being in your hometown. I felt like I was already accepted there. Everybody knew me. Um, there was more than one time we used, of course, my brothers and my dad as backup, and or the local deputies who I'd known all my life. And so it was a great place. It was a great way to start.
What was a typical call for you in Glens Ferry in a small little community like that?
Well, there weren't a lot of calls for service, so it was more again about honing the service aspect. It's a small agency, a small town, not a lot of calls for service. So it was about learning to serve and whatever the call was, right? So if the ambulance had a call, you'd go and help carry the gurney, and if the fire department had a call, you'd go and help where you could. I mean, it was not the law enforcement that most law enforcement officers understand because it was such a small community. But it was great. It was a great way to start. It was a great way to get your feet wet, so to speak, in law enforcement.
Okay, so you start with Glens Ferry. Tell me the progression. What happens next?
So I was with Glen Ferry for a while, and then got hired in '95, February '95, I think it was, with Nampa Police. So in between those two times, I served an LDS mission in South America, and so I learned to speak Spanish.
Okay.
And came home and went back to work full time for Glens Ferry for a period, and then Nampa Police was hiring bilingual officers. I had a grant at the time. I think they were hiring 5 bilingual police officers. And so I tested with Nampa PD, and I felt like this was the big time, right? This big city compared to Glens Ferry, they had more than one stoplight. We didn't even have one. So I went to work for Nampa PD as a bilingual officer, and really learned an awful lot there. Nampa Police is a phenomenal agency. It's just a great city police department and a great place to learn about procedures and policy, and of course having the language. I was involved in higher level stuff as a translator than for the language piece than new officers typically are. I remember I did some interpreting on a homicide or double homicide case. I don't remember now exactly, but stuff that a young patrolman really wouldn't be involved in. But I was because of the language piece, the language barrier, and I spoke the language. So that was really eye opening to me to see, wow, there's a lot here in law enforcement that I didn't realize.
So how old were you when you started with Nampa PD?
21.
21.
Yeah.
So still very young.
Yeah.
What was the difference between Nampa PD and Glens Ferry in terms of the type of calls that you were getting?
Oh, the call volume was hugely different, of course. The potential for the type of calls isn't different. I mean, anybody in rural anywhere can have the worst call ever.
Yeah.
So the potential is always there, but the volume is what I just, wow, I couldn't believe the volume. Went from very few calls in a shift to I have to ask permission to go to lunch because we're backed up here 10 or 15 calls or whatever it was. It was at a time that Nampa was really growing really, really fast, kind of like we're doing now. In the mid 90s, Nampa was growing really fast. It was a place that people wanted to live, a place that people wanted to be. There were some gang problems that we were trying to get a hold of.
Even back then?
Yeah, in Canyon County. It was kind of the start of the gang issues. And we had some really well-versed people. I'd never been around gangs, so that was new to me. Of course, I didn't spend a lot of time on the gang piece because the language barrier wasn't really there for that. It wasn't really needed. But we did have folks that were. But the professionalism of the agency, the call volume, and the workload was just really, really intense, which was good. It was a great way to learn.
Did you have any sense, either at Glens Ferry when you started off were 18 or Nampa when you're 21 years old, you're very young, any sense of worry about your own well-being? I mean, I know we're all bulletproof at that age, but give me your thoughts about being that when you're that age.
Yeah, I probably wasn't smart enough to know when I should be scared. Looking back on it, I think maybe that's why I started that young, because I wasn't smart enough to know that you really shouldn't be in that position, or you should be more scared than you are, because you don't equate that at that age. You're right. Everybody feels like they're bulletproof when they're young.
So how long do you work for Nampa?
So first part of '95, I got hired by them, went through post academy with Nampa PD, and then I got hired with ISP and started with ISP in January '96.
Why did you go to ISP as opposed to just staying with Nampa?
My goal was always to work for the state police.
Okay.
It was where I wanted to be. It was a type of law enforcement. The beautiful part about law enforcement is there's so many different aspects. And I worked with some amazing police officers at Nampa PD, and they were really, really good city policemen. I just really wanted the work that the state police provides, and it's a very different kind of work, and that's what drew me to it.
Okay, so you start with ISP in '96. What are you doing?
So I went through the academy, we call it ATC 15, and in the spring of '96, I hit the FTO program or field training program. I was assigned to District 4, which is a Twin Falls district. The office then was in Twin Falls, now it's in Jerome. But I was what's called an East End resident. So I served in the Minnecash area, the Burley Rupert area, and which is a huge geographic patrol area for our troopers. And so it's all of Cassia County, all of Minidoka County, part of Jerome County. And sometimes we go over a little bit into Power County as well, but that was not much. But so it's all of Interstate 84 down to the Utah border. Oh, and Oneida County too. Interstate 84 down to the Utah border, and then Interstate 86 over to Power County.
I've always wondered this. So, as a trooper, well, I mean, are you just writing tickets? What kind of cases are you working on, or what kind of things are you doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends on what your assignment is, and quite honestly, it depends on your relationship with the local agencies. So when I got there, I hadn't been there very long, and I got called into the Cassia County Sheriff's Office. The sheriff wants to see you, and I thought, oh no, what have I done? I'm already in trouble with the sheriff. I just got here. And I went in, and the sheriff's name at the time, his name was Billy Crystal, Sheriff Crystal. He'd been a long time serving sheriff, very popular sheriff in that county, and he was towards the end of his career. And I'll never forget, he called me and he said, I understand you're a new trooper in our county. I want to treat you like you're one of my own deputies. And that's exactly how he treated me. To this day, some of my closest friends are some of those Cassia and Minidoka deputies that I served with, because that's who you work with. I worked with other state guys, certainly other troopers in that area, but not to the extent that I did the county, our city and county counterparts there. Because that's when you have something that you're really, a hot call you're going to, it takes everybody, because it's too rural. One person can't do it all. So the call volume, the call load, we certainly have an emphasis on traffic, and an emphasis on traffic specifically on the interstate. But anything that the county needed or city needed help with, and I did a lot of translating, because there's a high in those two counties, a high non-English speaking population. So I did a lot of translating, any calls for service that they needed help with if they didn't have the resources. We do, particularly in the rural part of the county, if it was hard for them to get to, or they didn't have somebody in that part, then we would jump in just like they jump in for the interstate. So it's really collaboration, which is the magic about about law enforcement in Idaho. It's all about that.
Same question I had for you about Nampa PD when you started so young. A little bit different. You're still fairly young when you start. I know that's a big area to cover. How far is your backup? Are you worried at all about your own safety, about being out there by yourself?
Yeah, so our backup is sometimes was the closest was in bed. I mean, literally on night shift, your closest backup, it could be over an hour away. We spent a lot of time down on Sweetser Pass on 84 as you go down to Salt Lake. So clear down by the Utah border is a mountain pass. It's called Sweetser, and it gets really bad in the winter. And that was part of our patrol area, and that would oftentimes be an hour would be your closest backup. The nice part about Idaho is many times in rural Idaho, I'd be on the side of the road with arresting somebody or helping a motorist or even writing a ticket, and I'd have just a citizen pull over and ask, "Are you okay?" That happened numerous times, and it's why I want to serve in Idaho, because it's the Idaho people. It's not just Idaho law enforcement; it's the people who choose to live here and call this home. Are just second to none.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because so I had a question overall, and this is mainly for me, for troopers in general, because I dealt with Washington State troopers, Oregon State Patrol, ISP, obviously. And I know from my own personal standpoint, obviously I was in law enforcement, and whenever I see you guys on the side of the road, I'm always watching, hey, make sure everything's okay. Do you, how is the mentality if your predominant job is to pull over and give people tickets, right? I gotta imagine that's not necessarily a fun job, and you're dealing with people that are a little aggravated that you're pulling them over. Um, I always think troopers are so stern, right? And I get it, because you're in a situation where you're out there by yourself. But do you think that takes a toll on a trooper over a course of a career, where you're constantly dealing with people who might not be happy that they're seeing you?
Sure, I think that's true in law enforcement anywhere.
Yeah.
Most of our customers in law enforcement everywhere don't want to be our customers. But I've got a friend that's an undertaker. He owns a mortuary. They don't want to be his customers either. So I think it's a matter of perspective, right?
Yeah.
But it certainly takes a toll, and we're hyper focused in the Idaho State Police on employee wellness, because I'm not so sure in my growing up throughout my time in growing up in law enforcement, I'm not so sure that it was, well, I know it's not the same job we're asking our troopers to do now. I think the job we're asking our troopers to do now is infinitely harder than the job I was asked to do.
How so?
I think that the perception of law enforcement is different.
Mm-hmm.
Though in Idaho, I think we again still enjoy a really positive perception compared to many states and many parts of the country, but it's still different. I think the variety of things we're asking our troopers to do. As a patrol trooper, I was never once, on a regular basis, I shouldn't say never once, on a regular basis, I was not asked to come down and attend Capitol protests at our Capitol, for example.
Yeah.
Our troopers are on a regular basis in that situation, very regular basis, routine basis. That was not the case in the 90s and early 2000s. So I think that the variety and the difficulty of what we're asking them to do is very, very much more difficult than what I was asked to do.
Okay.
So we need to make sure our employees are well. And so we're really focused on employee wellness in the state police. We have a sergeant here that his full-time job is employee wellness. We're concerned about physical wellness. We're concerned about emotional resilience, psychological wellness, all the things that we know now takes a toll that we didn't know when we were growing up in law enforcement. We did not know that it took a toll. And you probably had the same boss as I did that would just say, because we didn't know better, that would say, "You're fine, just suck it up." Or, "I can't, troopers don't show emotion, right? You're not showing emotion, are you?" "Well, yeah, I just held a dead child. Of course I'm showing emotion because the child was the same age of the kid I'm going home to put in bed in an hour." And so those kinds of things. But when we know better, we need to do better. And now we know better. We didn't know better at that time. I'm not finding fault with anybody. I'm just saying we didn't know better.
Right. Right. In this day and age, so when I was with my agency, for the longest time we had physical standards, and then they just kind of did away with them. Stupid idea. But do you guys have physical standards that you still have to pass no matter how long you're on the job?
Yeah, so we just switched. That's a great question. We just switched. We had the physical standard we have for entry, of course, is the post standard. It's
Right.
the Cooper standards. And then for us, we were finding ourselves, we were requiring everybody to take that same test twice a year. And we were finding that we were replacing a lot of knees and a few hips. And we really wanted to get out of the surgical business because it's expensive. And so we found we're always looking for a best practice another agency can do. And we're really plugged in at the national level with other colonels and other folks that do my job. And so I was at a meeting where the colonel from Texas, DPS, they do a rowing test. And we were absolutely convinced that it was the answer for us. Not the answer, an answer for us, that maybe it's better than what we're currently doing. And so we send some of our folks to Texas, got certified on how to do the rowing. And so that's what we do now. We do a rowing test twice a year. It's fast. It's really, really effective, and it's low impact. So even if you're suffering most injuries, not all, but most injuries, you can still do it because there's almost no impact.
Man, that's really interesting. I'd never heard that before.
Yeah, a lot of states are adopting the rowing, and we're Texas DPS kind of started. That's what we do now for our incumbents. But it's a must participate, and then we incentivize it. So we give our troopers 3 hours a week to work out. All of our commissioned staff get 3 hours of duty time a week to work out, and then we incentivize where they pass that rowing standard at.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay, getting back to your career a little bit. So you start in 96, and then right away in 97, you're awarded the Idaho State Police Silver Star. Can you tell me what the Silver Star is and how you got it?
Sure. So we have awards within the state police, like most law enforcement agencies do. And I was called. I was with a Cassia County deputy actually, and we were going to serve an arrest warrant at a house out in rural Cassia County, and we got a call. The fire department actually got a call right as we're getting ready to go serve an arrest warrant on this house. We get a call about I think we're 2 miles away or something of a house fire, and people were inside the house. And so we responded. That deputy and I responded to that house fire. Got there well before the fire department did, and sadly, tragically, we're not able to save everybody. We were able to get some of the people out of the house, but not everybody. So that's what that is from.
Okay. Okay. As you start to progress through your career, are you only, without talking about management first, are you only on patrol? Do you ever go to a detective's? Do you ever do any of that type of work?
Yeah, so I spent my first 7 years with the agency as a line level person, all in patrol. I was never a detective with the state police. When I joined the state police was the patrol division of a larger agency called the Department of Law Enforcement. And the detectives, so the investigative wing of that, were called special agents. And it was really under the same umbrella, the same agency, but you really didn't cross back and forth very easy. A few did, but not many. And it would have required moving because I was a resident trooper and there aren't resident detectives. And so we did not, we really liked where we lived. We really liked, I liked the work. And so I did not ever test for investigations. It wasn't until 1999 that, that we merged and became the Department of the State Police that you see today. And there was no more Department of Law Enforcement. And then those investigators came in. But prior to that, most of our special agents under DLE, the DLE model, most of them were not troopers first. They were city officers or county deputies and city detectives or county detectives, and then came to us.
Yeah, and I noticed that for the viewers or listeners who listen to Vicky Gooch, she didn't start off as a trooper either. So would it be fair to say that you never really had that desire because one, you didn't want to move, but two, you always had this idea in your head going back to your dad? You wanted to do that service through patrol, I guess?
Yeah, the uniform side really was, and it seemed like it was a different agency to me, and I didn't want to leave the state police.
Oh, okay.
I didn't make the correlation. It's all DLE.
Okay.
To me, I just didn't want to leave the state police. Though I worked really close with the DLE special agents out of there at the Twin Falls office. Great guys. I worked with them. I did some translation stuff with them on drug cases and stuff like that. That's where I first met you, actually. And so I worked with those, and that really opened my eyes to there's some different work out there that I had never been exposed to.
Okay, before I ask you some other questions, I want to focus on what you just said then. How do you, as the person who's in charge of ISP, how did you kind of not necessarily develop, but since you hadn't ever been in those detective roles or those investigative roles, how do you develop the expertise or the know-how of how to not necessarily manage them, but your specialty or what you're working on is predominantly road stuff. How does it get to the point where you're over all these guys and you're like, do you just put specific people in charge with good know-how, or you just kind of learn what these guys do? Explain that a little bit to me.
So that's a super valid question because it's true no matter what we do, right? Because our agency is so diverse. So throughout my career, I was a patrol trooper, patrol sergeant, investigations. Then it was under investigation. I was a lieutenant under investigation, so I didn't really do detective work. I was assigned to Capitol Security in the Governor's Executive Protection Unit, but at the time it was an investigative lieutenant. But it just because that's where it was housed, not because it was the work we did. But I got exposed a little bit there because I was housed with those, not housed, that's not the right word. I was with them, so I got exposed a little bit there. And then as a district commander in our Twin Falls district, I served as a captain. Initially, I was just over the patrol division, and the lieutenant answered through a different chain of command. And then when that lieutenant left, they merged as an agency. We merged, and those captains became over both patrol and investigation. So I found myself a captain over a part that, and a lot of those guys were still former DLE special agents, now state police detectives. I did not know their expertise. I had never done their job. And so the tactic I tried to take was to sit down with them, and I said, okay, help me understand. I could translate on the wire because I know the language, but I'm not of much use in other stuff. Help me understand, why do you do this and why do you do that? And they probably got tired of me being so inquisitive because looking back now, what I didn't see then, I'm just trying to learn, but I can see how the perception would be, oh, the captain's asking, maybe he thinks I'm not doing my job, which wasn't true.
Right.
I'm just trying to learn their job. And then when I got promoted to major, I was over forensic services. I was our system director over our 3 labs. Well, that's a complete different part of law enforcement I'd never done. I literally carried a notebook around, a notepad around with me for probably the first 2 months and wrote down every acronym and then studied those because I didn't know. I didn't even know how to spell GCMS, let alone what it did. But that's how I learned one of the cultural parts of our agency is nobody here has done every job. Nobody.
Right.
So as you go up in the organization, it's more and more important that you lean on those experts who are doing the job. Even the patrol guy that's doing the job today, it's not the same patrol job I did. For me to pretend I know what's best for that person is ridiculous. In the old times, early 1900s, the Industrial Revolution, the boss had to have all the answers. Henry Ford had to know the answer to every question on his assembly line. That's not today's leader. Today's leader needs to know who to ask the right questions to, because there's so much information and so much information readily available. The leader cannot be the expert in all things. But guess what? We have experts here who are. So just ask the questions. That's the effective leader, in my opinion, needs to ask the expert in the field. And so one of our things we do here at the State Police is treat every person as the expert in their field. As opposed to all great wisdom and knowledge comes out of the boss's office. It's you tell us what you need. I don't know what a scientist needs, but you tell us. And so we have in our agency, we have what we call the Colonel's Corner. It's an email box that comes, anybody that has an idea of how we can improve in the State Police, we invite them to send an email to the Colonel's Corner. How we can improve services, improve our culture, whatever it is. And we have done a ton of things in our agency that are ideas from the experts in the field, stuff I never would have thought of. Just to give you a quick example, one of our dispatchers, we have 2 dispatch centers in the State Police. One of them sent me a Colonel's Corner email and said, listen, I think this is a person that takes the emergency calls for service. And she said, I think if we put the name of the overpass on the overpass, that doesn't necessarily have an exit, but the name of the overpass, because we could get services faster, emergency services faster, because I'm the one that takes a phone call. I'm at a crash. It's an injury crash. We need help right now. We're at the overpass. Which one? I don't know. So now we work with ITD, and now as you look throughout Idaho, every one of our overpasses has a name on it. It says Eagle Road on the overpass because the expert in the field knew that. Now I could sit in my desk in my corner office for 30 years and I never would have thought of that. So if the leader doesn't ask, shame on us. And if the expert doesn't tell us, shame on them. But we've got to build a culture where they feel comfortable sharing. The weapon systems we use in our commission side of the house, down to the coats that our troopers wear, were ideas from the field.
Where did Colonel's Corner, where did that idea originate?
I wish I could tell you. I can't take credit for it.
Okay.
I don't know who can. But I don't know where the idea originated. But it's less important to me who gets the credit.
Right.
I mean, I'll give credit if I do, but I don't know. It's more important to me that we, now that you're thinking about it, I'm not so sure that Colonel Charbonneau didn't have, he may have, I don't know. I really don't know. But what matters to me is we're getting the right information.
Right.
My point is everybody is an expert in their field, and let's treat them like that, and they'll walk up to that. If we treat them like they just need to know from me how to do their job, that's how they'll act. The problem is I don't know how to do their job.
Nope,
I've never worked a major drug case with a wire and federal. I've never done these complex cases. I don't know how, but boy, we have people in here who do.
Right. So, okay, so now I want to talk about the leadership since you brought it up. So at some point, you start getting promoted. So what's the first standard, or what's the first promotion that you get? What's
Sergeant?
Sergeant.
Yeah.
Okay. Once you get to sergeant, give me your thought process about getting promoted. When you got promoted, what was the idea of, okay, I want to do this because I think I can help out these few guys. And was there ever a time when you started the promotion, whatever, the ladder, that you went, I think I want to be the guy that's in charge?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, because I don't remember ever thinking that. But I had an academy classmate who just in the last few years told me that he remembers me saying that in the academy. I don't remember ever thinking that.
Wow.
So I really don't know. I did not join I don't remember joining the State Police with my goal of being the Colonel of the State Police. That wasn't my goal that I recall. In fact, the first time I tested for sergeant, I had about 3 years on and didn't get promoted. I was too young to be promoted. I understood that. But the fact that I didn't, I went and asked, what can I do because I want to improve? And I sat down with the then brand new major of the State Police. His name was Ralph Powell. He retired as our colonel before me. And I sat down with him, and he had been my father's sergeant, and he had I had great respect for him, and he had a lot of respect in the agency. And I said, I didn't get promoted to sergeant. I think I'd really like to be a leader in this organization. What do I need to do to prepare? Of course, you pointed out that I started so young. I did not have a college degree at that point. And he said, you need to go get educated. You need to go back to school. And so I decided, I remember driving back after that meeting to my house, deciding to go back to school. And I was a little nervous because I didn't think I was smart enough to go to school, to get a college degree. What I now know, what I didn't understand then, is a college degree. It takes a certain level of intelligence, I suppose, but it's more about tenacity. It's less about intelligence. But as I decided to go back to school, and as college education came, first undergrad and then graduate school, then the promotions came with that. And so that was a huge part that I owe Colonel Powell that really convinced me to go back to school. And so I asked him, one time I said, how can I ever repay you for what you did for me here? And he said, pay it forward. Convince the next guy to go to college that doesn't have a degree. Not that that's a do all end all, but it is a thing that you need to, that I think is helpful as we go throughout our organization, throughout our careers, and the professionalism of our profession.
Give me an idea then, when you start to get promoted and start to rise through the ranks, what, why not be, why not be a patrol guy your entire career? What's the reasoning for wanting to get promoted and to keep going?
Well, I really saw some. I saw that I felt like I could make a difference. I saw some things that I felt like we could do better as it relates to treating our experts as experts. I saw some things that I felt like we could improve on in the areas of leadership, and I wanted to be part of that. I felt like I could make a difference as a patrol trooper on my team right here with this, and be an informal leader. But where I was as a resident trooper, I was really limited in the difference I could make there, and I wanted to make a little bit bigger difference within the organization, not only to the public. And so that's really what kind of drove me for the promotional piece.
So if I went to talk with one of, I guess I don't know how much touch you have with the normal patrol officer out there, but if I was going to talk to one of the people that works directly with you, what kind of leadership style would they say that you had?
I suppose it depends on the one you talk to, but I hope that they will say that it's collaborative.
Okay.
We meet just last week. We had graduation. We meet quarterly with our commanders and our captains, and we just had that meeting last week before our academy graduation. Prior, we used to call that the captain's meeting, and I think words matter, and I think words are powerful. We used to call that the captain's meeting, and we'd go in and get the information, of course, as you would, and then go disperse that throughout the state. We changed that name to the Commander's Council because I literally want to sit in council with those leaders and have them counsel me on what the direction is of whatever the issue is we're dealing with. The U.S. Senate and the House of Representatives years ago when they were formed as a country, the House of Representatives was called that because they were representative of the people. The Senate was supposed to counsel the president on what to do. That's why you have to have Senate confirmation for some jobs in government, and you don't ever have to have House of Representative confirmation because the Senate is the council to provide advice and counsel to the president. And I view our captains much the same way. I want them to counsel with me, and I hope they're counseling with their folks all the way down the line in the agency.
You've mentioned collaborative stuff several times. As you're explaining your leadership style, and you're saying, "Look, I hope it's collaborative." Do you think that still gets back to when you were growing up with your dad? The whole, hey, I want to help everybody out. I want to make sure everybody's kind of doing their job and helping out in the community.
Could very well be. It's really, really what I have learned in this organization. We're an organization that's so geographically diverse, and what we do is so diverse. It is really difficult to get that any idea from here clear across a geographically large state to every employee. It's really difficult, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just the nature of what we are. I'm not Boise Police that I can call everybody on shift to come in right now, and they're here within 30 minutes, right? We have, it takes us 8 hours to get to the northern part of our border from this part of the state, right? So to be able to be out and rub shoulders with our employees and to be able to hear them face to face and voice to voice is really difficult, just because we're so geographically spread out, and the work we do is so diverse. It makes it difficult.
I'm curious because you do cover so much area in the state of Idaho. Do you find that you're dealing with different crimes or different problems as North Idaho versus East Idaho versus here in Meridian?
For sure. Well, I don't know if there's different crimes that are committed, but our work is different because it depends on the allied agency's needs, right? So I shared earlier, I think Boise Police, they're a large agency. They don't need much from us unless they have an officer involved something or something, right? Or a huge protest or something like that. But smaller agencies, a sheriff and 2 deputies or a chief and 3 officers, if they have a homicide, there's really not another game in town. They really need our help. And so we want to be responsive to them. I'll use forensics as an example. Year in and year out, our forensic system, our 3 labs in the state police, about 90% of the work we do is for other agencies. They're not state police cases. Our forensics lab system does not exist for the state police only. In fact, 10% of what we do is state police cases. It's for federal partners, it's for city partners, county partners, sometimes defense attorneys. It's for everybody to use that system. Well, when you're that responsive to the entire criminal justice system, it has to change how you lead. because it's not just about us.
Throughout your career, have you noticed it? Has it always been? I mean, again, getting back to the collaboration, did you ever have a time in your career where you didn't think things were going so well with other departments had to step in and go, hey, we're here to help, or with your philosophy, you've always encouraged that, and you always kind of, at least come away with the idea that, we're here to help. You guys tell us, and we'll kind of go from there. Was there any trouble spots in your career with that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, personalities get in the way
Yeah,
and stuff, for sure.
sure.
But I think that historically, the Idaho State Police hasn't always walked up to be as collaborative as I think we should have been. And I remember dooring up with my friend who was a city officer, a county deputy, and why can't our bosses get along? Well, as time goes, those city officers and deputies become chiefs and sheriffs. And so then we're left now going, okay, we've watched how we didn't want it to be done in some instances, not all, but in some instances, we didn't want it to be done that way. So what can we learn from what they did right, the people that have come before us, and what can we do to improve on the standard that they set? And so there is a misnomer for people that aren't in law enforcement, specifically in Idaho law enforcement. Every state is set up a little different, but there is not a hierarchy in Idaho, meaning the county doesn't come in and take over the city, and the state doesn't come in and take over the county or city. That's not how we're set up at all. In fact, our state constitution is very clear. The elected sheriff is the highest constitutionally elected officer in his or her county in Idaho. In all 44 counties, that's true. Now, when it comes to authority, the state law says every Idaho state trooper shall have the same duties and powers and responsibilities. But the highest constitutionally elected officer is the sheriff. So that is how our constitution is set up. So that sets a framework. But I got to tell you, when the public needs help, they don't much care what your badge says.
Right.
They don't care what your side of your car says.
Right.
They just want help.
Yeah. Okay, so in 2017, you get promoted to colonel, and you're in charge of the whole shebang at that point. What's going through your mind? Are you happy? Are you excited? Were you trying to get that position?
So it's interesting. I was serving as our lieutenant colonel at the time, as a deputy director, and I was pretty young to be a colonel. And when I was asked, I was, and still is, very, very humbling to think, because I work every day in this building with people that are probably way better poised to do this job than I am. Not probably, they are. Some of them share it with me, but that's not true and not fair. But there are people that have way, way better talents than I do. So what I'm looking at is, okay, you didn't choose this and I didn't choose it, but here's where we are. How can we be as effective as we can during this time, knowing that this is only going to be a snapshot in time? Somebody had the title before me, somebody will have it after me. So I want to make sure I'm doing as well as I can while I have this position, to do as good as I can for our people and for the people of Idaho. But at the end of it, understand that I can't allow it to become who I am as a person. There was a time that you had a very different identity than you have today, right?
Right.
And if you would have allowed that to be your identity, what happens in positions of authority, whether it's a police officer or the colonel or general or whatever, if we allow that to define us, when the title goes, so does our self-worth or our self-definition. So I want to do as good as I can while I have the position, and hope that it doesn't define who I am as a person, because who I am as a person goes way beyond whatever current job I have.
But did you want the job?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay. And now that you are the colonel, how does it work? Do you have term limits? Are I'm assuming you don't get elected because you were appointed by the governor, but how does that work?
Yeah, so let me back up. I wanted the job because I didn't fully understand the job. If I would have fully understood the job, I'm not sure I would have wanted
Fair
the job.
enough.
But anyway, I don't think anybody fully understands it, or nobody would want it. Maybe that's true with many jobs. Maybe that's true with law enforcement in general. I don't know. But yeah, so I was appointed originally by Governor Otter. And so what happened with that is the governor gets to appoint, but it's a cabinet level position within our state government. So then you have to be confirmed by the Senate. So I was appointed by Governor Otter, confirmed by the Senate. When Governor Little was elected, he asked me to stay. There weren't very many cabinet members of Governor Otter's cabinet. He did ask to stay, but he did ask me to stay. And I had to go through the Senate confirmation process again. And then Governor Little just last year was reelected and asked if I'd stay again. And so I had to go through the Senate confirmation process again. So I've gone through the Senate confirmation process 3 times in just over 6 years, just the way that the governor's elections fell. But it's interesting. People see that you represent the state police, which I surely do, but you represent both ways. I also represent Governor Little. specifically to the legislature. We have 105 legislators in our state. And when I speak to them, I'm speaking on what his priorities are, not what my priorities are, or not what I think his priorities should be. We have a saying in the West, we call it writing for the brand. I'm a Western guy and I write for the brand. Now, both Governor Otter and Governor Little have always been excellent at providing me the opportunity to share with them what my thoughts are. And I think they take that into account. But when they make the decision, I will champion that as if it were my own decision because that's the brand I write for.
Do you think, I mean, Idaho is very red. And, every time, like for my agency, every time the president changed, new U.S. attorneys and everything else. Do you think if we weren't so red, do you think that your position would change?
I don't know. That's a great question, and I don't really know the answer to that because I only live in
Fair enough.
But my counterparts throughout the United States, the average tenure for a colonel is about 2.5 years. Throughout the United States is what I heard, 2.7, I think, or something like that. So they turn over faster than what we have in the last few years, for sure.
But do you think that's political in the other states?
I don't know. That's a good question because not every state is set up the way we are.
Yeah.
Not all the colonels are at cabinet level.
Right.
Some of them answer to a cabinet level, and so it's hard to. It's kind of like judging apples and oranges. It's kind of hard to judge. But
well, let me ask you this then: how often in your experience, how often does a colonel change?
So,
at least here in Idaho, not the other states.
I think Colonel Powell was 3 years, but he wasn't. I can't think of a colonel that was forced to change. I think they just wanted to retire, and it was their time, wherever that was, 3 years or 5 years or 7 years.
Okay,
it was just their time to go. Typically, colonels don't stay as long because it's more towards the end of their career, and they're a little further along in their career than what I was when I was just by the nature of the timing that it worked for me. I was younger, so I wasn't able to retire. In our retirement system, it's an 80-point system, which means your age plus your service has to equal 80, and then you're eligible to retire. I have 79 points. So I give 79 points answers, which may be very different than an 80-point answer.
Fair enough. Do you have any goals that you'd like to see accomplished before you retire with ISB?
Yeah, when I took the job, I wrote, and it's in my desk. I wrote on a piece of notebook paper, this is what I'd like to accomplish while I'm here. And we've accomplished a lot of them, but we still have some work to do. Specifically as it relates to manpower, we're not where I think we need to be. And as it relates to pay, we're not where I think we need to be. I think those things are things I need to work with our external stakeholders, our elected stakeholders, because they're the ones that really can make a determination with that. But those are the two big issues that I consistently work with our elected stakeholders on, because I know our state is growing. So the state police is growing too, but not at the rate that I think we should. As we look at what we're asking our folks to do, we're asking them to do more and more with not with less and less, because that's not fair, but we're asking them to take on more and more with the same or diminished resources. And it's hard to do that. Diminished resources isn't fair. It's not the same percentage of resources because our state's growing. We're growing too. And Governor Little is super supportive of the state police. And if you look at the positions we've got over the last 5 years, oh, wow. I'm not sure the state police has seen growth like that in recent history. So that's been really good, but I think we need to continue that and pay and benefits as well. If we're going to have the very best, we need to attract the very best that we can. And so we've got to do the very best that we can when it relates to pay and benefits and work culture. So we're hyper-focused on work culture as well to make this a place that people want to spend a career.
So along with what you're saying then, if somebody is listening or watching this interview, and wants to be a trooper, what type of people are you looking for?
Yeah, we're looking for self-motivated people that are able to work independently and make independent decisions. We can teach you how to be a state trooper. We can't teach you how to think. We need to make sure you know how to think on your own. We can teach you the skill set, but we need to make sure you can think independently, because our folks are out there by themselves, making decisions by themselves, and they've got to be self-motivated, independent thinkers. And if that is you and you want a rewarding career, good news. We have openings. We need good people.
And I'm going to put the telephone number and maybe email for the recruiting in the description of the video. Have you noticed over time with this younger generation the quality of recruits that are coming through?
We've noticed a diminished in the quantity, significantly diminished. Although I talked to my counterparts in other states and they would love to have the numbers we have, and we feel like our numbers are way, way down. but the quantity the quantity is diminished. The quality at the end. We just graduated 24 recruits last Friday, and I think you'd be hard pressed to say any one of them is a lesser quality than anybody currently wearing our uniform. We have very, very high quality people. If they make it through our entire process, they're very high quality, which is part of our culture.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I talked to Captain in Wenatchee, and I think he's echoing what you said. It's not the quality of people that are coming through, it's the quantity. He said, look, we're still getting good people, but we've got to grab them up before they get poached from another agency. Do you kind of find that?
That's right, and we've got to provide a culture because people now. I joined the state police with the intention of staying here for 3 decades. People don't necessarily do that now. They think nothing of changing entire careers, let alone agencies. So we've got to make it a career, a culture that they want to spend a career here, because there's not a point where I think they feel I'm locked in, I can't leave, because they think less of leaving than we did.
Yeah.
I think it's just a generational issue. It's not good or bad. It's just different. So we've got to cater to that. The other benefit of this generation is they're not hesitant to share their opinion, and that is awesome because we need to hear from them. We need to hear what they're thinking, what they're feeling, how they're feeling about what they're doing, all those things, so that we can make course corrections for our employees. So there's some real benefits.
Okay, so two last questions that I always ask. Over the course of your career, did being in law enforcement affect your family?
Yes.
In what way?
I think I think there are some positive things.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that my wife and I have 4 children, and they're all adults now. But I hope that they have the sense of service. I hope that they have the sense of serving others and the importance of leaving the world better than you found it. I hope they have that sense. It seems like they do as I look at what they're doing with their lives and their educational pursuits. So that's a positive piece of it. The negative piece is, and this is on me, and it's not on anybody else in my family. There were times in my career where I prioritized the state police above what was actually the most important thing, which was my family. Um, there were times that my priorities were probably not as in sync as they should have been, because I thought the mission of the state police was so important, and it is an important mission, but not at the expense of relationships with your family. And I'm not suggesting it was bad, but I could have done better.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that I talk to kind of feel that way. How do you deal with that? I know you're talking about changing, this culture and making sure that the work environment's very good for the younger people coming in and everything else. How do you kind of relate to what you just said to these younger people coming in? Are there people going in and talking to these younger people and going, look, this is a job, but it's not like the overall thing you got to realize you got to prioritize things. How do you handle that?
Yeah, I think this generation is better naturally already at handling it than what I was. To me, the state police was all encompassing, and really was our lifestyle.
Mhm.
And I think this generation now already has that naturally in place that I didn't. Um, I think that, and we're seeing that I think they're better at that than what we were. So I'm not so sure it's as drastic as it was in our time, that we didn't even know it was drastic in our time.
Yeah,
And maybe the reality is the mission at the time called for it.
yeah.
And so it's different than it is now. But we have, of our 24 that just graduated, I think 6 of them were veterans,
Mm.
young veterans. Our veterans today getting out of the military, if they came right out of high school and doing a 4-year hitch in the military, they're 22 years old when they come out. We have been at war since they were born. There's no other generation in America's history that has been like that. So when we say, one of our employees told me, "Don't tell me we're dealing with a lesser quality." These people know nothing but war, and they still decided to enlist in the military, and they still want to be state troopers. And that's just the veterans. We have other people with a vast array of other experiences, but they're very well poised. We just need to be in a position to be able to support them.
Okay, so last question for you. You seem to be a very optimistic person just based on our discussion in general. Can you look back on the time when you started with law enforcement, 18 till now? Did your view of people in society change at all?
Yeah, I think it has to, and maybe it's ever changing as we deal with stuff. So as a patrol trooper, you're dealing with virtually everybody you deal with, unless you're doing a public presentation or something. Virtually everybody you deal with does not want to be your customer, right? They're on a traffic stop, they're going to jail for DUI, it's a drug case, whatever it is, they're a suspect or a victim, right? You're dealing with somebody that broke the law or somebody that is having the worst day of their life and they're a victim of a crime. That's what our officers typically face. And so if you're not careful, you can tend to view everybody as that lens because that's who you deal with. We don't stop people and say, "Thank you so much for obeying the law. Have a great day." That's not what we do. What we do, right? So, when you deal with everybody, you deal with is either a victim of a crime or a criminal, essentially, right? Not saying they're bad people, but broke the law. Then you can easily be jaded. And in leadership, if we're not careful, a lot of the things we deal with are personnel issues where somebody made a decision that was not the best case decision, and they're left with the fallout of their decision, and we're left with picking up the piece of decision of an employee, right? And so if we're not careful and we're not looking for those positive things, then pretty soon you can think that every employee makes bad decisions too, which is completely untrue. Just like not every citizen makes bad decisions. So it's hard not to get jaded, but it's possible not to. We just got to constantly be on the lookout, whether you're on the dealing with the public side or you're dealing with the employee side. And to what it's easier on the employee side, I would say, because there are opportunities that we can recognize our employees for good things. A lot of opportunities. Not all leaders take advantage of those. And looking back, there's probably some more I could have taken advantage of too. But I'm trying to take advantage of as many opportunities as I can to recognize because I am so fortunate to be surrounded by amazing people. We have incredible people here doing a most difficult job. The honor of my life has not been to be the colonel of the state police. The honor of my life is to say I was associated with people like this.
Colonel, thank you very much.
Thank you.